So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Dover holdups blamed on signature demands of French customs. So I saw this headline, I thought, this is stupid, this is a joke. And then I read the article and realised, actually, this is kind of serious. And once again, it's on the British government wanting to be a third country. There were ways around this, but the UK, as always, decided to go it alone. And doesn't end well, does it? And for anyone who wants to question it, this is gridlock. But yeah, so demands by French customs officials over the types of signatures they will accept on post-Brexit paperwork have been blamed by business leaders for causing long queues of lorries on approach to Dover, which isn't really true, is it? It's not. This is not the primary cause of delays, but this is causing a further problem. But again, it's not the French government's fault or the EU's fault. This again is on the British government. So 2 years after Johnson smiled for the cameras, fountain pen in hand, hovering over the EU withdrawal agreement, the British Chamber of Commerce said a minor disagreement over the signatures on customs paperwork has arisen between Britain and France. So if these are talking about UK exporters, these problems would have existed for a year now. So it doesn't even make sense why suddenly the wet signature issue has become a thing. As far as I know, the EU haven't changed their rules around it. So it is kind of sus that this has suddenly become a problem. But then again, it's the British Chamber of Commerce who are talking about it, and they are meant to protect business interests. So again, it's a hard one to figure out what exactly has changed between this year and last year, when these sorts of checks would have been happening last year. William Bain, the head of trade policy at the BCC, said the trade body had heard from UK exporters that French customs officials were requesting a wet signature on border documents for shipments of animals and plant products from the UK. However, he said much of the documentation is produced digitally, creating unexpected holdups on deliveries from Dover to Calais. And again, the EU have been doing full inspections for a year now, as far as I know of, so it's very odd that this has suddenly become an issue. It could be that this is just one of the things they've talked about over the last year, and it is still an issue because people haven't figured things out yet. That's the only thing I can think of. He goes on to say, like many of the problems, this looks down to be to a differing interpretation of how trade agreements work after leaving the EU. So again, he's questioning interpretation, but whose interpretation is wrong here? Looking at this article where it goes further down, I think it's the UK have misinterpreted it. Is the latest string of issues with the trade deal that speaks to the wider problems of interpretation, inconsistent application and glaring gaps in its coverage. Documents with a wet signature from an official vet have been required by the EU for imports of food and animal feed from the UK since the 31st of December 2020. So essentially the 1st of January 2021. So this has been going on for over a year now. So to moan about this suddenly is very strange. It very much feels like a get out of jail card for the growing queues in Kent. While electronic certification would have been possible using an EU computer system, the UK turned down an offer from Brussels to use the platform and build its own system instead, which, UK IT systems don't work properly. They take ages. Universal Credit took years to be implemented properly because of IT system problems. The GVMS system is still causing IT problems, where it was down for one of the days in January for over 15 minutes, which 15 minutes may not seem a long time, but when you're dealing with hundreds or thousands of lorries, it is a long time. So the simple fact here is the UK tried to build its own IT system, and that's caused further problems with the EU saying we need wet signatures because that's the case. And again, the EU have been doing checks for over a year now. So for suddenly the BCC to be like, oh, this is the big problem now, this is causing delays, it's a bit sus. The government spokesperson said a shortage of vessels due to ship refitting was the primary cause, when I'm hearing stories about things I need to properly verify, of course, but that ferries are, not full because trucks are not getting across because there are issues with paperwork. They're stuck in, lorry parks. Although the government urged the EU to take a pragmatic approach to the new rules coming into effect, I'm assuming that's about biometric stuff, even though that's way down in September and we're still having problems now. I would not be as concerned with the stuff coming in September as I am with the things happening now. We've always been clear that being outside the single market and the customs union would mean changes to business. Actually, you didn't. You guys said there'll be no downsides, considerable upsides. And only an absolute madman would leave the single market. No one is threatening our place in the single market. So no, you didn't. And you kept saying businesses need to get ready for Brexit, but you never said what they actually had to do, which is another failing of the government. The dispute over wet signatures is reminiscent of the days. Again, I wasn't alive during this time, so I'm sure that Viv Jamin or Michael M on Twitter could let us know about this glorious time about wet signatures in the 1980s, when France ordered that all foreign-made video recorders entering the country be cleared by a 9-person customs depot in some place in France, hundreds of miles from northern ports where goods were shipped from Japan were docked. So essentially they were given their own port, because I'm assuming because of the complexity of them, or because France didn't want foreign-made video recorders into the country and maybe wanted to manufacture them on their own. Who knows? The French are very strange, but the British are more strange, as we know. In the 2 years since Brexit, UK exports to the EU have fallen sharply. Of course, they're going to blame COVID for that, which has played a part in it, but you'd have to look at other countries to see how they're dealing with it. And of course, other countries that export similar things to us. This caused severe disruption to global trade, COVID-19 of course. Britain appears to have been hit harder than comparable advanced economies. In fact, other advanced economies, our neighbours, are actually doing better than we are. According to the consultancy Pantheon Macroeconomics, which is a very catchy name, UK exports in November were 12.9% below their 2018 average. By contrast, data for October from the Bureau of Economic Policy Analysis in the Netherlands showed real goods exports from advanced economies were 1% above their 2018 average, which shows there is an issue. My concern is, why, for one, are they using the October numbers, and then for the UK they're using the November numbers? Again, very strange. So I'd assume November trade would be higher in the run-up to Christmas. Very odd choice, but you can see other countries are going back towards 2018 levels. Again, a very strange metric to use. So a very odd metric to use, but the UK down on previous years, should we say. The BCC said 3/5 of UK exporters, so 60%, it surveyed in November, reported difficulties with trade with the EU, up from 49% in January 2021. So in January 2021, the ones that would have had problems are people exporting to the EU. And also in the UK, customs, there were still customs fees on certain products. Now it's 60%. That's the majority. Not a slight majority or the vast majority, just over a majority, 60%. And I think once physical inspections kick in, that number is going to go up to probably about 70%. And let's not forget, certain companies have stopped trading with the EU altogether because of the complexity. So, would they be omitted from these statistics, or surveys, should I say? The UK government introduced full customs controls on EU imports from January 1st, ending a grace period designed for smooth transition. Again, we're not doing full customs checks because we're not doing physical inspections, unless the two are classed as two different things, which would be a bit strange. Gareth Thomas, the Shadow Minister for International Trade, never heard of him, said ministers need to prioritise reducing red tape and delays. If ministers won't act on the Chamber's ideas, they need to explain what they are doing to keep trade flowing. I mean, they're probably going to say take back control and you wanted to be a part of the EU and blah blah blah. Bain said it was possible for the UK and the EU to take pragmatic steps towards reaching new understandings on the consistent interpretation of the post-Brexit trade and cooperation agreement. And again, making it a both sides issue. What do you want the EU to do here? With regards to the wet signatures, it's evident that because the UK has gone for its own IT system, the EU require wet signatures. I'm sure that rule applies to all other third countries around the world, right? So why are you suddenly making this such a big deal when you would have known about this for a year? It's very strange. No one is expecting goods to flow as freely across the channel now as they did prior to Brexit. I mean, if you spoke to a Brexiteer prior to the referendum, I'm sure they would have told you otherwise. But the way the trade agreement is being interpreted in the 27 different countries is a major headache for UK business. Oh, would you look at that? Imagine. Oh, surprise. The 27 EU member states can have different rules on their imports. What? Crazy different rules on pallets and things like that. Oh, what are you saying? We need a consistent a consistent metric or system for it, they're all 27 different countries. They can have slightly different rules on them. Take back control from who? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not taking a dig at this guy, but for Brexiteers acting like the EU was one homogenous thing doesn't make any sense. For the most part, the EU sets out directives, and it's up to member states to adhere to them and apply them where they can or how they can. Like with the biometric stuff, it's up to EU member states how they want to implement them. So if they want to do hardcore physical biometric checks, the French, for example, on lorry drivers, the EU aren't going to be like, yes, punish them more, yes. No, they're like, look, we want to do biometric checks. How do you guys want to play this? It's typically what happens. Especially, this is going to affect especially smaller firms without the cash reserves to set up new EU-based arrangements, which, again, we've spoken about Cheshire Cheeseman at length here, and that's what he had to do, set up shop in the EU, which small businesses cannot afford to do, true, but a lot more of them will have to think about it, and that's a huge problem for the small businesses and the UK in general. There's a bit more I want to talk about from David Henning, saying that one for the series of who could have possibly forecast about Brexit that the French might not wave all UK trucks into the country once they didn't have to do so. A big part of Thatcher's reasoning for the single market is to get rid of all this stuff. So, nation states can't, I want to say be petty, but that's not even the thing either. It's just one set, kind of a closer set of rules so that trade can flow easily. Because the French aren't being petty. These are the rules that they set out. The consistent failure to admit over 5.5 years that there is a choice between regulatory independence and interaction with other countries. North Korea might have the greatest regulatory autonomy of any country. They probably do. Sorry if you can hear my cat. In the name of sovereignty, not much of a model though, because nothing really gets in there. And I wouldn't say North Korea would be the best example. Probably Iran would be a better example. Brexit can't deliver while ministers and ultras deny there are any drawbacks or choices, which is true, because you can't resolve the problems that are there. If we used an EU IT system, we wouldn't have as many problems as we do now. You can't fix a problem you deny, at least publicly deny. So instead we get the waffle about imperial measurements, which again, I grew up, for the most part, the UK uses a hybrid system in some areas, but I grew up, with grams instead of ounces, so please, let's not go back. And being the greatest at absolutely everything forever and ever, everything's world beating, everything's the best, everything is France's fault. Incidentally, Labour faces the same problem. It also doesn't want to talk about the difficulties of Brexit for fear of offending the Red Wall, so we have to ignore losing 4% of our GDP in the medium term, pretend it didn't happen, but as long as it's not in the national conversation, Labour kind of have to avoid it. And buy British or something, which, Tories and Labour can push that. Although close to France in the geographically, I think he's talking about, in the latest GDP per capita figures, I saw the UK is behind all of our neighbours. We're currently the poorest country in what may be described as Western Europe. Things that aren't often said. We are struggling. The UK is struggling here. And the simple fact is, I don't know when. It's not even when we're going to get back on our feet, because simply it's not the case. A 4% hit to GDP is massive. But yeah, David Henning laying out some very interesting points here, and the simple fact is, when you want to be sovereign and autonomous and all this stuff, that's fair. But once you start wanting to trade with other countries, it can cause problems, especially with things as annoying as IT systems. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.